You're live.
Call the meeting to order. No 3-minute delegation. I return to say that. Can you hear me? Okay. Call the meeting to order. We have no delegation for approval of agenda for March 21st. Moved by Debbie, second by Hunt. Any questions, comments, or issues? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. In conflict with pecuniary interest for the general nature thereof? Showing none. That's for a motion to adopt the minutes of March 7th, 2022 Snowmobile regular council meeting. By Sherry, second by Linda. Do you have something, Linda?
Yes, my name is listed as being present, but I wasn't.
Okay. Right, look after that. Anything else? All in favor of the motion? Motion carried. Bylaws and resolutions, Snowville's Township Municipal Budget 2022, second for second reading. Moved by Linda, second by Sherry. Questions, comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion carried. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Your Worship and council members. So it's important to note now that the second reading is complete for the budget. The third one is anticipated on April 4th. The commentary period or the 30-day comment opportunity ends 1 week prior to that Monday. So we're anticipating at the next council meeting, if there are any comments or any additional items, that we would be including those with the third reading for council on April 4th.
Go ahead, Linda.
Based on that, could I don't know if this is a proper opportunity, but I know that we had discussed originally with the very, very first budget that the possibility of purchasing an electric vehicle. And then as the budget process went through, we changed that to be a truck, a guzzling vehicle that uses gas. And I'm wondering if with gas prices as they are, do we want to reconsider going electric, which was the original proposal?
Okay, fingers pointing at each other over there. Somebody want to answer that?
I know 2022, there was some half-ton trucks that were going to be hybrid coming in, actually 2021. We can investigate and see what the pricing options are and availability. Availability is huge on anything right now. But it would be a patrol truck for the roads department as well. And a fully electric vehicle for the roads department is tough with the miners that go on.
So you were suggesting that you would consider exploring that?
Yeah.
Hybrid?
Hybrid.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's not back in the budget, they were scrapping a small car and going to a half ton of some sort.
Right, but they do have hybrid half-ton, not fully electric.
You okay with that one? Okay, can I do anything of that?
Well, yeah, I think just to reiterate one of Jeff's points, is availability is developed right now. I think that you pre-order these things, it's about 1.5 years at this point for full electric. I don't know about the hybrids, but we need it sooner than that, soon.
Sorry, go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I also believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the truck is actually available right now that we're transferring. So we're not purchasing another truck at this time. Is that not correct?
How's that go, Jeff?
No, we're transferring it to the building.
That's right, we're not purchasing a truck.
No, we're going to tender for the vehicle for the roads.
For next year, well, I thought it said.
No, this year.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood that.
Brian, you want to talk on that?
Just to clarify, Your Worship, so the budget included a transfer of dollars from the building department to the public works department for the used truck. And then the public works department was then purchasing a new truck for public works operations. So originally the availability of an SUV counselor of the land was for the building department. There's not necessarily that same flexibility of an SUV in the public works department, and therefore it's a truck, which is the reason that the hybrid option is being considered because of the temperature, the time it is on the road, battery life, et cetera, with electric vehicles. We need to ensure that patrol truck can stay in activity for long periods of time, and not rated with that light battery. So that was the difference between the SUV to the truck. And then to clarify with Council Davis, is the building is getting a used truck. The Public Works Department is getting the new truck after that transition.
Any more questions? Questions coming? Do we have both the movers on that?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so I'm up for a mover for the,
Sorry. Council was the other council was straight.
all in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Financial accounts, staff report, manager finance. Two shops, Stoneville Township accounts payable.
Okay, so the report you have in front of you is the accounts payable for the month of February. I did receive one inquiry regarding the report, and that's in regards to under our general government, the first page, the Stone Hills Minor Hockey Association that we paid money out to. This is for the youth grant. Normally, you wouldn't see this as it comes through the youth grant and it goes through their own checking account, et cetera, but we haven't received the checks yet for that new account. So I had to pay it through our accounts, and then they will reimburse us once we get the checks for it. And I don't have anything else to note to mention.
Okay, Linda, that was your concern? Okay, good help. Any other questions, comments? For a motion, pass that we back to the accounts, moved by Kevin, second by Sherry. Any questions, comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, we're gonna go to the audio visual equipment upgrade for council chambers.
So the report you have in front of you tonight is regarding the upgrade of this AV system that we have in place right now. So the microphones, the speakers, the live streaming capabilities of the township, as well as the two video monitors on the side. We've done some investigation, we've talked to different companies, and we've come back with the results. One company has gone under, one company chose not to quote, and one company did not have the equipment that we were looking for. What you see in front of you is the results of that, and what we're looking for tonight is council's endorsement to allow us to begin the process of purchasing this. I did include a few stats about the fact that our live streaming is about 31 people or 31 views on average. Some meetings there's only 6, some meetings there's 200. So it seems to be dependent upon what the actual topics are on our agenda as to how many views we could receive. So is there any questions in regards?
Any questions, Christine? I guess my question is, council's on the wrong way out with recording. Where you want to call it recording anyway. Stop or, we're doing that, but now we're on the COVID, so I just asked them, there were people stop there. Go ahead, Sherry.
I just still think it's very important. Doesn't matter really how many people watch or don't watch. Just to be transparent and open and available, I think it's very important when we stay engaged to offer.
Okay, anybody else have any comments? Go ahead, Kevin.
Just wondering, it was 38,000, that's the quote that you're referring to?
Through your worship, yes, it is. You're referring to the 38,000 because the lower quote is the one that's gone out of business. So we have to go with the one that's a little bit higher.
And they're out of Kingston?
They're actually out of Ottawa, but they've got other offices throughout the area.
Okay, anything else? We have a motion in front of us, and then one move by Doug, second by Debbie. Any more questions, comments? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, just, do we track meeting by meeting stats, Christina? I'd be interested, not now, obviously, but when you have a moment, just to give us stats of how many watched our budget deliberations. What?
Through your worship, yes, I do. I have meeting by meeting stats, and I have the viewership during the meeting, and then I have to kind of dig in to see after the meeting, but yeah, the budget ones weren't, there was not a lot of viewership for those ones. Those ones kind of drag the number down, maybe they're about 6 or 8 sometimes if we were lucky. Your regular council meetings are usually around 30, 35. They seem to be up there unless you've got a hot issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That being said, most important meetings of the year.
Yeah.
You have something?
And just going like, Christine, you're saying there's like 35 council meetings roughly?
So through your worship, normally on a council meeting night, when we're physically sitting here, the viewership runs about 4 or 5 people watching it. By the end of the 24 hours, there's usually about 35 watches or more.
Oh, but come on, later.
Yeah, and rewatch it.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Just one more question. Does it just stay up for 24 hours and then disappear?
Through your worship, yes, we only leave it for 24 hours because it isn't closed caption enabled. We can turn that on now. We have that capability through YouTube. It's not very clear with these microphones, and some of the words come out a little, not nice in some cases. They don't read properly. They read like, somebody might say something and then it just drops the end of the sentence and you get some weird different words stuck on the end of the sentence, but I think it's the microphone system itself that's not picking it up.
With that being said, everybody in favor of the motion? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go see how most public notification draft the policy and draft bylaw. If I go ahead.
Worship, before you this evening, there are 2 draft policies and bylaws. Once council is comfortable with the policy, then we would look to council to endorse the bylaw by passing the first, second, and third reading. The purpose, typically, information like this is directed by council and therefore then brought back by management. I understand that that's not necessarily how this process has gone, and I would like to provide explanation for that. As you'll see inside the report for both of these reports, Section 270 of the Municipal Act highlights 7 policies that must be maintained by municipalities. The first, the public notification bylaw, the last one was in place in 2003 for our municipality, and there has been subsequent changes to acts that require an update to this bylaw, and so that's why you're seeing this here this evening, and likewise with the next report, council staff relations, which essentially was the interpretation of our staff, and we had that covered in the council code of conduct as far as the relationships through the HR policy and the code of conduct to how they would interact. And it was actually advised by the municipal affairs to actually carry that separate policy as a standalone to ensure that there was very clear policy in place for council and staff to be aware of. So the first one is the public notification bylaw. It's important to note that every municipality essentially has the ability to determine whether they will meet the minimum standards or whether they will exceed them. It's the recommendation to pass a resolution or a policy that hits the minimum standards, and then where time, opportunity, interest allows, then we will exceed that in other matters. So what you see this evening in the chart is essentially the Municipal Act requirements of when notice is required and then what terms and in what form that's included in that chart. So I did have a conversation earlier today with Councillor Lalande with regards to discussing whether the information from the CCCE with regards to site plan control bylaws and notification, whether there was an opportunity to incorporate that into this bylaw. And the difficulty with that bylaw is that there's no ability, there's no act, there's no measure that permits us to include that and what prescribed form that is. So as we talked, and I'll allow the planning manager, if you will, your worship, to explain how that will be interpreted and covered under site plan control when that process arrives.
Thanks, Frank. Through you. To that point, as it relates to the Planning Act applications, we
first and foremost, have had consistent and continue to have ongoing communications with the CCCD group, and their, president, Jeff Wong, as it relates to our official plan update that's currently underway. And just as an aside, in the next month or two, I'm very hopeful that we're before you, with their status. And again, another statutory public meeting related to the most recent update and future adoption here in the next month, few months. That ongoing communication from an official plan update has brought in some more enabling policies with respect to public consultation. And I believe we're at a good position with respect to ensuring that it's consistent with the desires of the CCCE. As it relates to on-the-ground changes from public notification perspective, the official plan and neither the official plan nor this procedural bylaw, in my opinion, is the adequate place for public notification requirements for Planning Act applications, because they are mandated under the province and the Ontario regulations, as well as we have bylaws, for example, the intensive livestock bylaw, site plan control bylaw, that are better means for inclusion of what those mandates are, because they're specifically related to an actual application. For example, if we change our site plan control bylaw, which in my opinion is due to be changed, we would then be needing to go back and amend this procedural bylaw if that had a change that was in error or didn't fall and coincide with what we had included at this stage, because they were approved at different times. So for that reason, CAO Brooks and I are of the opinion that the procedural bylaw would be approved to ensure that it meets the statutory minimums of the Ontario legislation from Planning Act applications, and we go above and beyond in our specific bylaws that are applicable to planning bylaws. So that is the plan as we roll out, and that's been the consistent communication between the CCC and staff. And then one more point before I leave that topic. I'd like to point out that, as many of you are aware, we already do go above and beyond what's required or prescribed by the province as a minimum standard. For example, our notice of implementation of the GIS viewer is much in addition. Our notification on site with orange signage, as well as notification via mail out to neighboring property owners, and the odd notification in that beaver, all are in exceedances of the minimums. So I feel that personally we're doing a very good job with respect to notification here in the township, and by no means are the minimum requirements as prescribed within this procedural bylaw those to be the only requirements. They are set to say they would be minimum requirements as opposed to the absolute. So that's just a bit of an update from the planning end of this. I'm recognizing that this procedural bylaw goes above and beyond from more so than just a planning perspective. Thanks.
Any question for Jason? If not, I will, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Jason, I don't know whether I'm reading you right or not. Are you suggesting that down the road CCC would get a call from a special notification because they're a group and such, rather than more above anybody else in the community? Is that what I'm hearing you say? That's a possibility?
Through you, Reed Smith, to Councillor Richmond, no, absolutely not. It's not as though staff are proposing that the CCE be granted a separate committee or a separate circulation or a separate position. For example, through the official plan update process, they've been provided and afforded the same opportunity for public comment and input as any other ratepayer in the community. They respectfully, though, have been more vocal in providing staff with valued input as to how better improve public input and garner that comment. And we've tried to take that on board through this process, and we see that being a good relationship with respect to how maybe to make that better. But it's not one to say that they're a standalone committee or they're a standalone group that may receive any specific or targeted notification above and beyond any other user group or ratepayer.
Thank you. My concern only was that we get 2 or 3 other groups, and first thing you know, you've got to go through 9 steps to do the same thing you were before, and I'm glad to hear that, thank you.
Anything else? Brian, go ahead. So your worship, just to categorize the report, anytime that the municipality has a renaming of a highway, closure of a highway, name of a private road, we approve it, advertising devices, new licensing provisions, bylaws, proposal to restructure geographical boundaries, we do annexation or amalgamation. The notice requirements for all of these, including change of name of municipality, whether we establish a BIA, whether we dissolve a local board. That's not a council committee, but a local board. I.e., when we did the police services board, we had to put the notice out in advance of the council meeting, that we had the resolution. Changes to the council composition. So had we approved just recently that we were going to look at that further, we would have provided some notification to the public, and that was included in that report. We were going to go to council warded election, a new procedural bylaw. This brings me to another thing. There is, inside the verbiage of the form, manner, and times, there's some inconsistency in the reference to a procedural bylaw. One, the first column under new procedural bylaw, it should be procedural. So that's the reference to our procedural bylaw of how and when we call meetings. And likewise, as you get into the scheduling the meetings, regular special sessions, in your document that you have this evening, it's referred to as the procedure bylaw. So I've changed that to amend it to the procedural bylaw in both there as well as the section of the 240 municipal act. So anytime we have budget, anytime we have financial statements, seizure of personal property, whether it be tax sale information, we have the requirements to give that notice. And so that's what we want council to be aware of, that any time that there's act requirements, that's what's driving us to come back to council for that decision-making authority. And sometimes when it's delayed, it's because of that additional notice and public endorsement that we have to do before that can be completed. Anything else? Something?
Yeah, can we comment on the content of that bylaw at this point in time? I have 3 sections that I think require updating. The first section was the permanent closure of a highway. I think all 3 sections that I'm going to quote, I think require advertising in the paper, and they're not listed that way. And so the first one is permanent closure of a highway. It says you're just going to put it on the website and put a sign up. Well, and I know I'm being facetious, but if you're going to close one highway, one sign won't do it. Okay? And everybody in the municipality is subject to needs to be subject to awareness of the a closure of a road, because they may not drive that road for 6 months. So they may not look at the website for 10 days to see it. So I think it should be public notice on it. The next one was advertising device, and it's the same thing. I mean, that bylaw on advertising device would cover all of our roads. And I guarantee you, all kinds of people in this municipality that never look at our website. They wouldn't know until we were in trouble. But they do get to be, so I think it's important with that one. And the last one was the change of council composition. I think if that was ever to happen, it should also be listed in the paper. And again, for the same reason, there's all kinds of people that don't check the website on a daily basis. Those are the 3 that I had concerns with.
Your worship, that's a very good point, Councilor Davison. The difficulty with having the newspaper listed, and we can add that to it, but without the exclusion of other, is that there is not a single newspaper that hits every resident of our township. So it hits a good portion, the one that you spoke of with regards to the Beaver. And so that's the reason that the newspaper was not identified as one of those sources, as it does not reach at least the northeastern portion of our municipality, and therefore was excluded. If we want to add the newspaper into these things as well, we certainly can do that for additional notification's sake. But it was only done as there is a good portion of our municipality that does not receive that newspaper.
Okay, I thank you for the rationality on that. I still think we should add it and get the majority of the residents. Because I know all the young people live on their computers, but I'm gonna tell you, there's a lot of people in this township that don't live on their computers and don't check the website every day. So I just think it's important to, on things like that have great importance for a lot of people and have the opportunity to lead people in maybe into some difficulty. We should do the best we can, and I would like to see those three included with notification in the paper.
Anybody else, any questions, comments? So I'm looking for a first, second, third reading, moved by John, second by Sherry.
Eric, do you have to make a motion on that?
Yeah, yeah, I'll just take, go through them, Scott.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, that's a good point.
Okay, that'll be done. Okay. You okay with that? Or no?
Yeah, so it's in there.
Yes, amendment, yeah, okay. All in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Council staff relations, draft policy and draft bylaw. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Your Worship. So again, this policy is one of those that are identified under 270 of the Municipal Act, and something that staff errantly, relied on our council code of conduct and our HR policy to govern. You'll also see in the bylaw, because they're both prescribed under section 270 of the Municipal Act, we essentially completed the notification of the public. That first bylaw, when we did the second bylaw, there's one section in the middle part of the email or one section of the bylaw that still shows the notification of bylaw. So that's been updated to show council staff relations. So this again is in front of council for consideration and passing if the content is deemed reasonable by council.
Go ahead, Linda.
Yes, so looking at the very first document, which would be the policy, I believe, yeah, the policy on page 3. So it says it is expected that council members will. So in the second bullet, it's got two completely different points that it wants to make, and I would prefer if they were two separate bullets. So refrain from using their position to improperly influence members of the staff in their duties. And then another bullet saying to gain an advantage for themselves or others. So, because I don't think they go together, they're two totally different points of view, or points. And the other,
Sorry,
the last point is the form on page 7, just that we need to put the municipality of Stone Mills, not Dysart at all. And that's listed in there 3 times in that form. Where is that?
It's a ministry sample
Okay.
that they give us for the sorry, Worship. It's a sample that comes from the ministry for those 7 policies, and then you have to include essentially the portions that apply to the municipality. So you have to fill in the point parts. It's the entrance and the respectful reporting relationship, etc. as part of the prescribed part of the ministry.
Thank you.
anything else? If not, look for second, third reading. You have something, Kevin, first?
Well, I was looking at page 5, the top one there, the first one. Not speak publicly on any matters respecting any of the council's decisions and policies without authorization to do so. Yeah, I'm just wondering where that's going. I mean, if somebody asked me a question, I didn't respond to it. It's something that, we need to. I just wonder if that's tying our hands, so.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Your Worship, that section, Councilor Richmond, is actually, it's expected that staff members will. So that doesn't speak to council, that's actually us, as staff members. And that's covered under a confidentiality agreement that all staff members have signed in existence. So if you look just above that, it actually highlights the section for staff, Councilor Richmond. And so that's there essentially so that staff aren't separating themselves from decision making or council decisions, et cetera, in the public.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Linda.
So this is a really good policy, I believe, and I'm just wondering how, what your plans are for educating staff on that particular section. because there are quite a few interesting little things, even though I'm quite certain staff already complies with them. Is it gonna be built into the staff handbook, or is it just gonna be circulated to staff to review?
Your worship, respectfully, so when we do policy changes like this, we essentially have training days throughout the municipality where it's, we have new staff members or, we have that as part of their new, their 3 days or 2 days of training as far as their, as they're first hired. And also as we have refreshers or, witness, or we have health and safety coming up, we also include these as part of the education part. In the absence of having an opportunity to do that, I suspect we would use our HR downloads system, which would essentially just ask for clarification that they've read it. I don't think anything here is really how we operate as it is, and that's how it was drafted, was to try to kind of put in place the expectations we have to do for the conduct of the HR policy, but it's, as far as acknowledgement, we have a couple platforms that do that, whether it's signed just to say that it's read, or that we can do that as part of a training session.
Okay, thank you. So the township also has an HR download platform that we use, and we can upload this and have it assigned so that we have documentation to pay
You got something, Kevin?
Yeah, we never had this bylaw before, Brian. This is all new, this whole thing.
We never passed it by bylaw, Councilor Richmond. We had a Councilor Code of Conduct, which essentially spoke to your side, and we have language that speaks to, to relationships and communications in our HR policy. So I don't think this is technically new in concept, it's just not passed by bylaw. The policy itself needs to be a council staff in one form in order to meet the requirements of the act. So the concept is not new, the actual policy unilateral is. So it's not something that's been passed in this form in the past, at least not nowadays. Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I'm looking for first, second, third reading. Moved by Debbie, second by Sherry. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we're gonna go on. Anybody's at the table got anything to say? That's not on the agenda. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you. Just to review it for an item for information or consideration of that awareness is the next council meeting, April 4th. Schedule a planning meeting in advance of our regular start at 6:30 for council, start at 5:30. There are 3 zoning bylaw amendment applications on that application. Just to tie this full circle with respect to public notification, that's already been completed and it's been advertised in the Napanee Beaver. There's signage on site and mail outs that have already been circulated, so to ensure that the public is aware of that meeting. It's a consideration for 3 applications, as I mentioned, 2 of which would be then forwarded on to the regular session of council for a recommendation of adoption, should relatively go smooth at the public meeting. Whereas the other application that you're aware of in Tamworth is for consideration and awareness of members of the public, and no decision is proposed to be rendered that evening. But it'll be an overview provided from both county staff as well as township staff with respect to that proposal. So I just wanted to make sure that all council is aware of that date. It's already been published on our portal and all the documentation is available. This is really just a heads up on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is the
Yeah, I would, question for whoever's leading the project on the parquet in County East. I'm wondering if we can be updated on the timeline to start that project and the planning principal process.
Thanks, Doug. So currently our plan is to start May 1st with full restrictions. The other part of that is the weather certainly is quite wet until then, so we need to start getting excavation before May 1st.
Wait a
And just to follow up to that, I actually did some cement work and things like that myself last year, and just for information's sake, last year it was just about impossible to schedule a cement finisher or anything besides the fact that they were extremely expensive when you could find one. but their availability was pretty limited. And I also know that Ontario Hydro, they're very scarce when you need them, especially if you do hookups and that. So I'm just wondering if we should be maybe trying to at least negotiate with a finisher ahead of time and get one tied up, or when you think the expected timeline is, and possibly start the process of whatever it is you have to do for hydro on the site.
Yep, so, we currently have pricing for concrete, we don't anticipate having any issues, getting a contract when we need them. All we can do is give them as much notice as possible and hope they show up. As far as hydro one, I don't see any issues, running a service that easy to go. I think we actually even have room, on the concrete work to run a line if we had to.
Do you need to put permits in areas for you?
Oh, we do, yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else over there? Anything else from members? Take it. Go ahead, John.
No apology for being late. It's been a while since I've walked council. That's the time I used to leave. Apparently I've gotten slow.
Like 1 minute.
Y'all are ready to see, brother.
Oh, my legs are a bit old.
Just, John, I agree with the council thing. We attended the morning service and the other day we had the meeting and we were there. Very interesting what, what you do and, the amount of food they put out. They go far north, and they do the legacy here in Stanford. I guess that's the two comment I got around and, they were quite impressive, weren't they?
They're doing about 1,000 meals a week right now. We arrived around noon and there was just dozens of coolers and people were taking them at the door. So they've got quite a system going there. And it was an impressive organization. They have Kevin Alkenbrack, he's the executive director. They've hired a fellow named Ash Free, who's worked at the hub in Kingston there, to help with outreach and implementation. They've got 8 or 9 volunteers. They've got a bit of a food bank in the building there. It's down on Water Street, is it?
On the west, on Water.
Yeah. And, it's a real going concern. And the county supported them with some COVID grant money, I think about 104,000 or something like that. So that's gone a long way to help. They've in the warming center area, they've had someone volunteer to create some temporary cubicles along each wall. So I think there's room for maybe 10 or 12 people. And they've got they're sort of like gym mats that they use as a mattress. It can be disinfected very readily. They've got the use of the washers and dryers at the John Carrot Center for the bedding, because of course there's always concerns about sanitation there. That saved them from having to scramble around doing laundry. So yeah, it was very interesting and impressive. Stuff like this is going on in the community with volunteers. You sort of hear about it, I think that's good. But to actually get a sense of it in action, it's pretty impressive. Yeah, and you feel good to see what's being done.
That was very impressive where they had the people in, they had a little booth to check for COVID and they had to turn a few away or some were 50, but yeah, it was very, certainly out.
Yeah.
Like that. Okay, with that being said, we're gonna move on. We'll have a closed session and Brian, you can talk about that, but before we go, we're gonna get over our meeting, so I want a confirmation bylaw of our regular meeting. Move by Sherry, second by Kevin, all in favor? Motion to adjourn, Debbie, Linda, all in favor?
Yeah.